we know where we want to end, right? Which again goes back to our Board of Education setting goals. Like we want our kids to be college and or career ready, right? So they have those options. You can personalize along the way, but you still got to get to that ending point.
Welcome to Powercast. My name is Jeff Pelzel, and I'm joined here with my colleague Rick Fernandez. And today we have this awesome pleasure to introduce Kirk Shrum, Superintendent from Visalia Unified, who I've gotten to know very well over these last 2 years. And Rick, we're going to show you how it's done here in California.
I mean, am I going to be like ready to purchase an electric vehicle? Am I eating avocados? Like when you say that, I get a little nervous. So
no, just wait. Kirk, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, talk about your journey, and tell us a little bit about Visalia Unified, and be ready to be impressed.
Okay.
Rick.
Okay.
No pressure there, right? Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, Kirk Shrum, Superintendent Visalia Unified, just about to wrap up year 3. Which is hard to believe. Time goes by really fast, but came to California via Tennessee and Georgia. Last district. Yeah, so I'm kind of doing the opposite of what people say they're doing. And but great opportunity, great district, and but had been a classroom teacher, school administrator, district administrator, and then continued that journey into the superintendency.
Well, how did you go from Tennessee to looking at opportunities on the West Coast? I'm just curious. It always fascinates me how people, make decisions or what they look for opportunities.
Yeah, so, my most recent assignment prior to this was in Georgia, actually, from Tennessee to Georgia. So, but, close enough.
Yeah,
the South, right?
SEC, yeah.
And SEC, exactly. And so, just started looking for the right fit to be a superintendent. It really is a combination of what is the board looking for? What does the district need? And then what do you think your skill set is? And where is their alignment? So really was looking for a place of diversity, a place where there was opportunity to improve academic outcomes for students, and a board that was willing to go on that journey, that was willing to look at things maybe a little bit differently to get different outcomes. And so found that in Visalia and applied, interviewed, and landed.
Wow.
So, I mean, only recently your board was the school board of the year in California, which is crazy. Like I think in your second year, maybe they were, or maybe it was your first. I cannot remember, but school board of the year in California.
So our board has been on an amazing journey. They had gone through a little bit of a rough patch, maybe a couple of members left for different reasons. They had, a couple of appointments, those sorts of things happening in the midst of course, COVID and those things, and went through a couple of superintendents, interim, just a lot of transition and a lot of uncertainty. The district had kind of become viewed as maybe not the destination district or not where people
had some challenges,
want to go,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so the board was really looking for someone to come in and give new direction. And so for the first time in 3 or 4 superintendents, they looked externally as well. The past few had been internal. So really just decided to change kind of how they approached the search, and which was fortunate for me.
Yeah.
And really just came in and we went right to work on just establishing what we call our foundation, our core beliefs and commitments, a theory of action that guided what we were going to do, put all that into policy. Because the board's role is really governing from policy.
That's right.
And by putting things in policy, it really established and helped them understand their role in improving outcomes for students, and then what the role of the superintendent and staff is. And that clarity, I think, resonated and is part of what I think caused us to be recognized by School Board Association for the California School Boards Association District of the Year in my second year. So it took but that was, I did not expect it that soon. I will have to say, I think that's a testament to the work of the team and the board and their willingness to engage in this process. And out of 1,000 or so districts in California, that's a
huge
awesome honor.
That's
huge.
Huge.
And so really proud of where they have come in that journey.
And I'm just in my conversations with many of your board members, because I've met them from your first year when you had your sort of like state of the district, first time ever in Visalia, I think, that they had done some. And I was able to attend that event and sat with board members and meeting them at CSBA and other opportunities to interact with them. They are so student-centered And it's just really, it's so impressive to see that they honestly allow you and enable you to lead in your cabinet to really drive the direction, and they're so supportive
Yeah.
of your efforts.
It's, I mean, again, you see examples all across the nation, really, of where there might be lack of role clarity. We'll just say that.
Mhm.
But then what people don't recognize is they lose sight of the kid in that, and they're arguing on issues or things that at the end of the day won't impact a student.
Exactly.
Right. So I think it's just been a great journey for this board and for them to stay focused on what's really most important.
Can you talk a little bit about your students, right? So in your transition from Tennessee, anything you noticed that, and kids are kids, and some of the same barriers here are the same barriers in California, or any differences that may have arisen? Like, hey, this is a little bit of a different challenge that we didn't necessarily have back east.
I think the challenges are the challenges.
Yeah, kids, yeah.
The kids are different, right? Students, different, diversity, demographics, that might vary, right? State requirements might vary. I discovered, coming from Tennessee and Georgia, I thought, California, it's probably got really rigorous graduation standards. And, I get out there and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe we are doing something right, in the South, educationally. And but the challenges everywhere of just like low expectations, this is just kids today, all those sorts of things. I think that just kind of exists everywhere. And everyone's struggling with, well, what are we going to do about it? How do we approach it? It just varies, in the approach. But I think a lot of people are struggling with, how do you keep kids engaged in class? And I think a lot of it is because we're trying to hold on to how it's been. And our students have access to information.
Yes.
They don't need the teacher maybe in the same way we did years ago, right? When your source of information was the encyclopedia that you had, right? Or the teacher. And so, I think we're seeing some of that, and especially coming out of COVID and kids seeing, oh, there are lots of different models. I can learn at home. I can, this or that. And so, I think our challenges are very similar across the nation.
One of the things you guys have created is this Visalia Unified, I think it's Forward 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that. I think there's like 3 pillars or something, and obviously that's under your leadership because that has to be a new forward-facing document. So talk to us and share with our listeners what that's about.
Yeah, so our board, not really have in the past had a strategic plan, so to speak. And you'll see in a lot of places people come in and immediately start working on a strategic plan. And I felt that where our board was, we needed to take some time to build out the foundation before we even engage in a strategic plan. So again, the core beliefs, commitments, what do we believe, what are we committed to, theory of action. Then about in my second year, we began that journey of engaging our community, One Visalia Connected, we called it, and other things to really start to get at what does the community, which includes teachers, students, all of that, businesses, want to see for the future of the education system in Visalia. So began the work on building what would become our strategic plan, which we called Visalia Forward 2030, a community-driven blueprint for the future. And it not only is our strategic plan academically, with the pillars you mentioned, but it also includes a facilities plan as well. But our pillars, what resonated with the community and what we really put in place were high expectations, high achievement, empowering students and community. So that whole engagement piece. And then the third is more of the operational efficiency focus. And so the 3 of those working together, and then we have multiple actions under each one of those that we'll build out over the next 5 years.
Very nice. And then for you then, I'm guessing in California, we have the local control and accountability plan. It just must nest under that?
It does. So that's a little bit of a different, that the funding in California is different. Every state is a little different. But a lot of that is driven in California from what they call the local control accountability plan funding formula. And so really this strategic plan will now kind of be the overarching piece from which the other plans draw from, because really everything that you're going to work on connects back to
it has to be
that
aligned.
Source, for alignment. And so that was kind of a new concept where I was of the strategic plan, and how does that fit with the the LCAP, the local control accountability plan, and working through those pieces. But they do connect, and people are beginning to see that alignment.
When you think about the student into the spectrum, what type of learners do you want to produce, right? And when you go into a classroom and you see instruction, I always go back to the portrait of a graduate. A lot of districts have that, but for Visalia, what should a learner expect? What is that experience going to look like?
So our board put in place what we're calling priority student outcomes. So they have about 8 to 10 goals that they've set all around everything from college and career readiness to A through G in California, which is the pathway to get into a University of California school, and other things as well. And so that really sets our goal of where we want to get academically. So to do that for students, then in the classroom, we're really focusing on, we want to see students engaged. We want students interacting with curriculum that's at or above their level, right, where teachers are helping them access it. And how we integrate tools, right? How students are finding things out on their own, like social media, all that, right? Like they're learning. So how do you create environments where they want to explore and where they want to learn, and figure things out, right? And so that's where we're going within our strategic plan. Really focusing on what is a highly effective classroom. That's one of our actions. What does it look like? And then building from that, teacher training, you name it, right, to get to that ideal state.
It's really, really powerful. I think, when you putting in these systems and having that clear vision of what does the superintendent expect, and that trickling all the way down to the site leadership, to the teachers, and everyone having clarity around that work. I think recently you guys were just recognized by the state of California for working with at-risk students.
Right.
Share with our listeners about that and what that work entailed.
Yeah, so really proud of a couple of our schools, like many districts for, students who may struggle in the regular learning environment, or in California, if you have certain discipline infractions, you might be expelled or suspended or that sort of thing. And so, but districts still need to provide an educational opportunity. And so we have a couple of schools. One is kind of that expulsion school. The other is for students that are, once they reach their junior year, that are really credit deficient. And so really working on advancing them, right? Not necessarily connected to discipline, right? So kind of two different types of schools. But at the end of the day, both of those schools really have been working on systems these past few years to get kids back to their regular learning environment. In the case of our expulsion school, we've had multiple students who are early reinstated because of just the work that school is doing with them holistically, right? Not only academic, but connecting them to CTE,
social,
connecting them to so all those things. It's really been amazing to watch. And then the integration back to the site, that's a breakdown in a lot of places.
There's no doubt.
We don't want the kid back or this or that, right? And so that's really been the focus of both of those administrators who have now been there for a couple of years. And so as a result of all of that, they were both recognized by the state for, community day school, those sorts of things. And I think one of our schools is one of the only ones in the county to receive that. I think our expulsion school. And so just really proud of the work. And both have been highlighted, which has been really cool.
Well,
really
shout those principals out. To give, if you want to drop their names and
no, I don't want anybody else to know about them, right? Like,
spoken like a true superintendent.
But no, Creekside and Sequoia are the two schools, and I was, when those things happen, usually you have people come and interview. There's a committee, right, that comes to visit the school, kind of similar to an accreditation sort of visit. And so myself, along with a couple of our board members, were part of those visits, and just amazing to see the work there.
I want to get y'all both to weigh in. I'm going off script a little bit, but it's thinking about instruction and how do we keep kids engaged. I often think that the level of interest, when the level of interest goes up, whatever that interest is for students, the mode and the learning style matter less. And really been thinking about, like, regardless of how I would gather the information or consume an experience, if my interest is like, I just want to know about it, I'll figure out how to learn it, whether it's I got to watch a YouTube video, whether somebody's got to show me hands-on, or somebody's instructing me on a whiteboard, whatever it may be. But as we keep trying to figure out how students learn best, just any thoughts or reaction? I'm just thinking the interest is where the money's at, more so than trying to figure out the modality of learning. So just throwing it out there. If I'm a fool, I'm a fool. It's okay.
No, I think that resonates a lot. People talk a lot about engagement. I think engagement sometimes can go a little awry in the case of what are you interested in? You figure it out, right? It's got to be within some guardrails.
Yes.
It's got to be, to get them to the academic level. But no, I you see that play out in your classrooms, especially your hands-on type, science classrooms, or if classes are engaging in simulations. You name it, right? So that when there's a motivation for, kind of gamifying, as they say, those sorts of things, right? Students who are into that will spend hours, trying to figure out, this level or that. I'm probably not even using the right term.
No, you're doing good.
So it really is. I wouldn't say that, students still need different pathways sometimes to access that.
Sure.
But I think overall your premise is spot on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rick. I mean, I think that, and that's kind of even our vision within Power School is to personalize this learning journey for kids. And if we can figure out at the core what really is motivating them, and ideally it's intrinsic, not extrinsic, like they really want to engage in it and they have a desire to learn. I do think kids will often find the path, and it won't necessarily matter whether it's like you described, whether it was through direct instruction,
right,
or a video or whatever, and often not just what was taught to them in that moment, in that lesson. They'll even do things on their own time.
Oh, sure.
To investigate and learn more about that, which then obviously deepens the learning.
Yeah, I think there's so many. I say all the time, with AI and all these things that people are exploring. You mentioned, all the different tools. A tool at the end of the day is just that, right? But in the hands of, that's where the teacher comes in, right? In the hands of a skilled teacher who knows how to implement, who knows how to utilize, that really is where magic becomes. And you can see that their impact really increase across the classroom. We have 25, 30 plus students in a classroom. So how do you reach every student, right? It's going to take that engagement. It's going to take the student willing to be a little bit of a self-learner along the way too. So all those things have to come together, to create that highly effective classroom.
Shifting gears a little bit, I can remember the first time I met you in your district office, and one of the things you came in and talked about that seemed important to you at the time was this whole concept of interoperability within your solutions. And you really want that in your system. Why is that so important for you as a superintendent, and what is the value you see behind that?
Yeah, coming in, we had a lot of different, I would say, workarounds to systems, a lot of different
Band-Aids,
and or just with any system, even our not just academic kind of student information systems, but financial HR pieces too, and so really seeing the work the district team was doing, and I kept looking and thinking well, does that not have the ability to do it? What? So we spent a lot of time on sending teams to different things to learn more about the products that we had purchased. Maybe the problem's not the product, maybe it was our utilization and understanding of it, or maybe it is, right? Figure that out to make smart financial decisions.
Right.
But really you need that integrated system because you need to know our kids at school, how are they doing? What are we going to do about it? All of those sorts of things. And then not to mention, all the safety pieces that are attached to those sorts of things as well, student registration, residents, all of that. And so, the more workarounds you do and the more different pieces that are not connected you have, the greater the risk of missing things, to me, increases. And so we really have spent a couple of years working on really unifying and integrating our systems.
You brought up personalized instruction, personalized learning, whatever we want to term it. If you were to close your eyes, and I want to ask both of you this because I've been thinking on this, what what would that be if you closed your eyes and you envision the school, the classroom, kid walks in, and what does true personalized instruction look like? What should it feel like? What should you see? How would they engage? I've really been trying to wrap my mind around what does that really mean, right? And if it's different for everybody, how do you even recognize when it's there? So I'm sorry to put you all on the spot,
No, that's a good question, and I think we have to be very careful in, if you think back, like you're saying, like to when you were in school,
yes,
and the career you ultimately ended, right? You ask an elementary kid, it's great to have their dreams and desires, right? But they're all not going to play a professional sport. They're not all going to this or that. So we have to be careful in that in that personalized journey, we don't direct along the, we have to direct along the way.
Yes.
We can't just say, oh, you're interested in so-and-so, and so, you don't need that math, or you don't need, because years later,
who knows?
Who knows, right? And that's why that college is so important. Yes, you may not go to college, but if you don't have the right skill set, that door might be forever closed. And so same thing, I think, with personalized learning journey, right? Like, how do you keep that in the lens of the standard?
Mm-hmm.
But give kids some choice and voice, as they say, right? And kind of how they access that standard. To me, that's kind of where you can personalize. I think you also have to be very careful. You'll hear a lot about, personalizing their journey and proceed at their own pace. That sounds nice. But, over half of my students are below grade level. And so if I say just, kind of proceed at your own pace, they're not going to catch up. And so we have to accelerate. And so I think we just have to be careful using words like that, and that, that we know where we want to end, right? Which again goes back to our Board of Education setting goals. Like, we want our kids to be college and or career ready, right? So they have those options. So you can personalize along the way, but you still got to get to that ending point.
So kind of transitioning us out on this end note question, for you finish the statement, in 2030, Visalia students will be, what's your vision? What's that look like?
In 2030, Visalia Unified students will be leading the county and the state of California in, all academic and social emotional indicators.
We really
You heard
appreciate
it here first.
He's claiming it. He's putting the claim. He's laying it down.
Okay.
Visalia, I told you.
We got it first the county, and then
I know. And did I not tell you? Welcome to California. We're going to show and demonstrate. This is why I asked him to come on.
No,
he's got confidence.
Hey, I love it. And the way you framed that personalized learning, like the messaging, you're absolutely right. What we say sometimes in education doesn't necessarily bear out. And I love that perspective. And we need to be reminded of that as we're, what we say and how we approach it and what we tout may not result in a practice that we can even comprehend.
But that's where all the tools and things come in, right? Because every student, if the student's behind or a student's accelerated, how does a teacher utilize those resources to keep them on that journey? And also incorporate it so that it is interest-based, and so we have lots of different clubs and programming and things to help that as well.
During graduation, I've got to ask you, during graduation, when one of the graduates comes across and they announce which university, if it's like an SEC school, are you just like, no, seriously, are you silent like,
we a little bit, yes. I will. At the
core.
I'm a little biased. SEC and some of the other leagues. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But no, I'm proud of all of our students and whatever journey they go on. But I just, from a school system perspective, we want them to be equipped.
Absolutely.
And I think that for whatever journey, because the journey they think they want to be on might change. And they may not know that. So how do you make sure they're positioned for that?
They got skills regardless of where the journey takes them. 100%.
Well, thank you for joining us,
Thank
Kirk.
you.
We really appreciate it. And thank you, Rick, for joining us
Absolutely.
here. We appreciate it. Again, thank you for joining us on the Powercast. We'd ask you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your fellow colleagues. And thank you for joining us. Until next time.